Hello, this is Nate Bailey from On the Fly Guide Service here in Southern Oregon, www.southernoregonflyfishing.com. And today I'm going to show you guys a special pattern that I use on the Rogue River Holy Waters. I was using a lot of the more popular salmon fly patterns up on the Holy Waters, and I get fish to follow for a long ways without taking, and this fly seems to have fixed that. I still get a few of them that followed a little ways and then take, but it's not like it used to be. The fly is tied with some special ingredients, some stuff that you won't see in a lot of places, and it's tied a little bit different than what you'll see. I start with smaller hooks than usual, and the reason I start with smaller hooks is that way I can put more flotation into the fly. I found out that the fish on the Rogue River, or probably any river for that matter, like it when the salmon flies are floating really, really high. So I start using a TMCO TMC 200R hook, and this one's a size 6, and I'll tie them in a size 4 also. I start with size 6 just because it floats better. If I don't get as many takes, then I will switch to the size 4 if the flies are a little bit bigger. I like to use also fluorescent orange thread, because once you put head cement over it, it's not fluorescent orange anymore, and regular orange turns brown. So the fish really key on to some orange, and that's why I use fluorescent orange. That's a tip. If you want your thread to look orange outside of the head cement, then you have to use fluorescent orange. And then I use a little bit of flash. I like to tie a little bit of flash into all my flies. I think it just attracts attention. Most flies, when they hit the water, will trap air underneath them, which creates little air bubbles. Nymphs, when they come up, that's what brings them up, are little air bubbles. So I always like to put a little flash in there. It makes the fly look a little bit more authentic. If you look at a lot of flies underwater, they have a lot of different flash to them. So this is my secret ingredient, and you'll see, this is antelope hair. And I like to find really, really dark antelope hair. And the reason I like antelope hair is because it's super, super hollow and super thick. More so than any other deer that I've found. So another thing about the antelope hair is it is the perfect color. If you look at a salmon fly, a lot of people tie salmon flies with really dark hair, and I don't like to tie mine with dark hair, because if you look at them up through the sun, it illuminates that hair and makes it look almost a gray, brownish gray pattern. So I like to use a little lighter hair than most people do, and I clip all that off, tie it in, clip it off, and then I'll wrap a little bit over it. Salmon flies are, if you look underneath them, when you're holding them in your hand, they are a little bit different than when you look underneath them in water. When you look underneath them in water, they throw a little bit more different colored hues than they do outside of the water. So it's always important to look at all your flies underneath the water. Okay, and that likes to pull out a little bit. No big deal. The hair will come over it. Next, I'm using an orange flash dubbing. And I like to make a little bump there to throw a little bit of orange in there before I put my hackle on. So I take a little bit of orange flash dubbing there, and I just wrap it right on. And I don't use any wax, because wax will make it sink. Okay, once you get that tail to hold down with your flash dubbing ball, then you just tie in a palmered hackle. Now this is another secret. Well, I guess it's not a secret anymore, but this used to be a secret. I use a purple hackle. And the reason I use a purple hackle is if you look at a salmon fly under the water against the sun, you'll notice that there's a purple hue to it, kind of a dull purple hue. And that's the reason I've started. Once I started changing to the purple, I get a lot more fish coming all the way and committing to taking them. And don't worry about the small hooks. when they take salmon flies, they take them hard, so you don't have to worry about them missing the hook. They will hit it. They they're almost eating the thing as they take it. So don't worry about the small hooks. Wrap that on as tight as you can get it. Sometimes I'll wet my fingers just to get it a little bit tighter. And then wrap it around, forming your body. Let it get thick. You could have a nice thick body. If you're using the synthetic dubbing, it won't hurt. It's going to float. And if you're using really good antelope, it'll float anyhow. That stuff's hard to sink. Palmer it up. I like to leave that little orange clump back there. If you look at a salmon fly, they have a little bit of orange towards the back. Towards the back end. If you turn one over, it's kind of gray and purplish on the bottom with a little bit of orange mixed in. Well, and then you turn it over and you look at the back. The back hump there's a little bit of orange in the back. So that's why I left that there. Tie it off. Okay, once I get it tied off, trim this. And you notice that I'm not using any hair stackers or anything like that. If I was tying them to sell them, or if I was tying them for a contest or something like that, I would. But the fish do not care. They could care less if I stack the hair on there. And I'm usually tying a bunch of these things before the season, so I want them to be fast. Now put some more flash in, just a couple more pieces to catch their attention. Tie that in. Okay. Get some more wing material, some more of your antelope. Find the darkest stuff that you can find in the antelope. And long. I like to tie them in really long. And I like how it tapers off to a kind of a tan color in the tips from a gray. It looks a lot like a salmon fly if you ever looked at salmon flies real close. Okay, we'll put it in and use a bunch. Remember what I said, the higher it floats, the better off you are. And it compacts down really good. Antelope hair really compacts down. And kind of work them around, make sure everything's good to go. Trim. You could really help yourself out too if you're using 210 denier thread rather than a light thread here, because you're putting a lot of stress on that thread trying to get all this stuff tightened down. Okay, well, the biggest thing that I hate about salmon flies or any kind of hair wing like that is when it spins. So I always put a little bit of glue in there before I lash it down. That way the thread soaks up the glue, and then the hair attaches itself to the thread, and then the thread's real tight on the shank. So then I'll tie it down and make a really nice post there for a hackle. So I'm going to run a hackle across it. Okay, and you can leave a few, pieces of hair out there. Now I take a Cree hackle and a big long one that's real stiff. Try to find the stiffest one there so it keeps it up out of the water. And then tie it in. And then I tie it in butt first. I don't palmer it. And try to make sure you get the stiff fibers there. You don't want the webby ones. Get all the webby stuff out of there. So again, this thing has to float. That's the biggest thing about salmon flies, especially on the lower section. Well, just below the dam on the road, you have to have floating salmon flies down there. They won't take one that's half submerged. Chernobyls and things like that don't work near as well as something that's high floating. And then just go ahead and run it on around. Pulling some. And that's alright. That'll work for me. I don't need to worry about all those. If I was selling them, I would worry about all that, but I don't. I don't worry about that when I'm fishing these. And then you take it and palm of your hackle, or get your hackle all the way up. Clip it off. Fold it all back. You want to keep all the fibers that you can. Tie it off. Tie a little head. Oops. Get that around there. Alright, once you get it tight, clip her off. Clean up the head there. Clean it around. And let me clip a few of those loose fibers. You know, just because I'm making the video, I'll clip those, but normally I wouldn't. Normally I just fish that. When you got to make a dozen of these a night, after you've been fishing all day, you don't care about little fibers like that. The fish don't care, so you don't. And there you go. I know it's a little different than what most of you guys are fishing. I know it's a little different than what most of you guys are tying. I know it's a lot uglier than what most of you guys are tying, but it sure does catch fish. So, next time you hit the Rogue River, give it a shot. I guarantee you, you'll have a good time with this fly.